Well, welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, Mike Cushman. Good morning, Gary Wilkins. And Gary's asking whether you want wings on Tuesday.
Uh, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds
Here we
good,
go.
Gary.
Okay. All right. So here we go. Morning. Welcome, everybody, to Talking Niagara. It is your local talk show on news and affairs impacting Niagara Falls area. Okay. And today it looks like before we do anything that we've got, it looks like we're kind of headed for an election April 28th. Carney's going to the Governor General on Sunday.
Yes, he's going to, and we'll get an election. They are, they're. It's a good move by Carney because he's riding on high wave right now. He is quite different from Justin Trudeau, who was flaky and to the left and wokish and all that kind of thing, or at least that was the perception of him. And Carney seems to be a much more level-headed, more practical, business-oriented type of guy. He's already taken a lot of the teeth out of Pierre Poilievre's
Yeah.
sort of mantra because he is now also looking for more pipelines and more mines, just like Poilievre has done, and yet the
Yeah.
Liberals for 9 or 10 years have slowed down all of that progress, and now there's a complete reversal. They're taking on all of the Conservatives' talking
Well,
points.
one of the big problems that I've had with Mr. Poilievre is been that he seems to be a one-issue politician. And I know the Conservatives out there are going to argue that I'm wrong, but he seems to have been a record which of late has been stuck on the carbon tax.
Well, he's also stuck on Justin Trudeau, which kind of limited his ability to come out of that. He
Yeah.
did a lot of character assassinations, which I don't like. I like
And he's
much
doing
better
character
the kind of
assassination.
I like
And he's
much better the kind of conservative that Ford was when he won his election. He he took his hat off to all the other parties and all the other people throughout Ontario that ran, no matter what party they ran for, and celebrated that was democracy. Not Poilievre. Poilievre sounds like there is no other choice but him, and all others are leftist lunatics. And those are talking points that Trump has used. That isn't the Canadian way.
It's an interesting question you brought. Okay, so you brought up an interesting question there about Trump's view, because in fact, actually, there's been some views on the US side that they'd prefer to deal with a liberal than they would Poilievre. Hello? What's happening? Dave? Okay, so we were talking there about the possibility of an election. Apparently, Carney is going to Governor General on Sunday to call an election. This has been much expected, really, realistically. And he's a week old as Prime Minister, so I think it's the right step. And also better that we have an election in April than we have an election in
Back again.
yeah. And better that we have an election in April than February 29th.
Yeah, this is an astute move by Carney. First of all, he's ripped most of the teeth out of the conservative talking points. He is vastly different figure than the JT, who who seem to be just out of it, and an elitist. Carney may be elitist, but he's a different kind. He was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and the place he is now today was through his own efforts of hard work.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so
And
that
he's been, and as former governor of the Bank of Canada and former governor of the Bank of England, that's quite a, that's quite a resume he's got there. And of the few people that would have the ability to climb into the shoes of the prime minister and face the absolute mountain that job entails, he's probably one of the few that actually has a resume that would kind of impress to say, hey, he can do that.
my issue with I got no issue with Carney. I think he's a very qualified person to have the job. I do worry about the rest of the Liberals, though.
Yeah.
You're looking at right now. You've just taken a 60 rusted out 63 Pontiac and put a brand new engine in it, and said, "Okay, we're all better now." When the wheels are falling off and the doors are rusted through, that to me is what the Liberal Party has just done. They've just, if you like, put a brand new coat on a coat of paint on something that's rusting away underneath.
But again, sometimes the brand new coat of paint politically is what you want.
Now, I don't know. I read something about who is the next immigration minister, and she sounds pretty flaky. I thought, oh no, here we go again. She says, "Oh, we can invite the best minds into Canada from the United States if the United States doesn't. And not only that, but we can get all these 2 LGBTQ people who feel that they're going to be persecuted in the United States." Well, Joe, that's just great. Well, so invite all the 2 LGBTQ plus all here. What will happen is you'll get a mob of them, and the Canadian government be on the hook for supporting them, because where are they going to get jobs? They've just pulled up, like they'll be coming in more like refugees, which means we'll have to support them. I'm not so sure that was a good statement all in all, because as far as I'm concerned, all the 2 LGBTQ plus people in the States are still protected citizens under their law, no matter what one or two goofy politicians talk. They still have a law there that protects their citizens. So I don't know if that was such a good idea.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. All right. In any case, this is Canada, not the US.
Yes, indeed, and we're a different place altogether.
Yeah. All right, and let's move on. One of the stories. Oh, okay. So we've got other than just your hate for the man, you're blocking people who have different option than yours. That's a horrible way to live. So basically, I think there's an argument going on here between Mike and Mike, who basically says to hell with Trump, right? And Gary.
Okay. Well, hate's not a good thing. Hate's not a good thing because it blinds you, but you can have massive disagreements for policy, and I think it's well, we're going to have difficulty with Trump in Canada anyway. He seems to be threatening our sovereignty and all that. So I can see where we can get really emotional about these kind of things, and it's not a good thing to hate. It's better to zero in on fighting than hating. That kind of thing, I think. Yeah. But I'm not so sure what's being transpired here across I know Gary likes Trump, and Mike doesn't. And so we'll see.
All right. So cartels are moving Totoaba fish worth tens of thousands of dollars
Totoaba.
Sorry?
Totoaba. I think it's pronounced.
Totoaba. Okay. Yeah. They're basically being traded for component parts of fentanyl through Vancouver and the like. It's kind of a weird one, but not surprising. Dave? You dying again? All right, so basically, Chinese organized crime networks and Mexican cartels are using Canadian ports to trade these fish, and it's a precursor to chemicals for the precursor chemicals needed to produce fentanyl. And this is what the CBSA is saying. Organized crime networks transport the fish from the west coast to China, while the chemical precursors make toxic drugs and are sent through Canadian ports to Mexico. And we've lost Dave again. Hello, Dave.
Yeah, I have to start up all over again each different time. But anyway, yeah, the Totoaba fish is this is a clever way in which
not surprising though, really, is it?
Yeah, it's a very clever way. They take a rare and endangered fish that has big market value in China, as kind of like the rhino horn has a big market in China. So what the cartels are doing is getting this fish and then sending it to China. Now this is a illegal trade, but it's worth millions of dollars because small amounts of the Totoaba fish are worth thousands of dollars when they get to China. And what they do is they put the Totoaba parts and their swim bladders and anything else that is supposed to have like whatever qualities it has into shrimp or other fish exports, and they use the Vancouver port basically to get them out. So they catch them, they incorporate them in other fish products and send them to China. And then the Chinese then pay them back in materials to make fentanyl.
Yeah.
So
it's a very clever thing and very difficult to actually catch.
Yeah, and they're endangered. So the whole world is not supposed to be touching these fish because there's not so many of them. It's a very rare fish at this particular time. But that rarity makes them very valuable. So the cartels have known of this and have been able to smuggle it into China via Vancouver. That's at least one of the main ways to get it. And it's really hard to find it because it's incorporated in shrimp or other fish products. It's hard to find. Yeah. Now, of course, it's coded somehow where once it gets to China, the Chinese know, the cartels in China or know at least how to find where it is and take it out and then sell it on the black market or other markets there. I don't even know if it's black market, but they'll make a fortune off of it. And one of the paybacks for that is ingredients for fentanyl that are somehow sent back to Mexico or other places where they make fentanyl. It's that is their currency. They're using these rare fish parts that are worth their weight in gold, sending them to China. That's their currency, and then with that, they get the fentanyl back as a payment. It's really quite
not quite worth their weight in gold, but they're $80. They are worth their weight in gold. 80,000 a kilo, definitely worth their weight in gold. More than that, more than the gold price.
Yeah, it's kind of, like I say, it's kind of analogous to rhino horn. Think of
Yeah.
somebody in Africa cutting off a rhino horn and sending it to China. It's an illegal trade, and they'll make huge money off of it. And think of them then being paid back in materials to make fentanyl.
Yeah. Oh,
Kind of
yeah.
a thing. That's and I'm sure there's different ways in which they pay back.
And probably, and the irony here is that probably the ingredients to make fentanyl might well be legal.
Well, sure, certain aspects of the ingredients are legal. It's
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Like I tell you, one of the most disgusting things that happened in the West here is um, when Iraq uh, was worried about the war that was going to come into the second war in Iraq. They put out uh, orders for fertilizers, and the fertilizer orders were the exact ingredients you need for making chemical bombs too,
Yeah. Yeah.
or bombs of chemical, like Chemical Ali, that guy.
Yeah. I
Um,
know. Yeah.
so who is right at the top? The U.S., France, Germany were filling these orders big time, full well knowing that they could be combined easily into making chemical bombs. They were exactly the things needed for chemical weapons. So and this is kind of like the same thing. You can, and then they says, well, we didn't send them anything. We send them stuff for fertilizers, full well knowing that's not what they were probably going to be used as. And the same thing with fentanyl. Chinese could say, oh, we're sending these chemicals. It's perfectly innate,
Yeah.
full well knowing that they're going to be combined to make fentanyl with other
Yeah.
chemicals. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
it's
that's the whole point
dirty
about,
business, man.
yeah, that's the whole point about this is so using these fish for to make to trade for semi-legal products.
Yeah, yeah, and then so the Totoaba fish comes goes west from the west coast to China, while the chemical precursors to make toxic drugs are sent through Canadian ports back again.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. It's kind of
Canada's being used as a transit point.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, next one. Some Russian oligarchs' daughters are on the Canadian sanctions list.
Now,
This is a really weird one because this is Mikhail Matrovich Friedman, who's actually deep in Putin's inner circle, his right-hand man, and probably number two in Russia.
nothing here. This is a National Post article, and what drives me crazy about this, anytime you look up Mikhail Friedman, they'll tell you in any other article that this guy is not only a Russian oligarch, he's an Israeli Russian oligarch.
Mm-hmm.
What has happened with Ukrainian oligarchs have been protected too by getting Jewish Ukrainian oligarchs and Jewish Russian oligarchs have found safety in Israel. Israel's kind of looking the other way into their nasty sources of money and invited them into the country, and that's where they're safe. That's where they can continue the business operations. And Israel is kind of looking the other way because they bring a lot of money with them. And nowhere in this article has it says anything about him being connected with the other oligarchs that have been invited into or found safety in Israel. So this
it doesn't really talk about Israel at all.
No.
Other than
what is important about this is that a lot of the money is then being filtered through Israel, and that is part of the reason that this stuff is all the the oligarchs are surviving so well with their illicit forms of making money. And now his daughters have filed in Canada trying to get off the sanctions list. So Mikhail Friedman has been noted um, as a kind of a dubious business character, well connected to Russia and the oligarchs there. So of course his assets have been sanctioned and frozen here and there.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they basically, these two daughters are claiming they haven't lived in Russia since 1999, financially independent of their father, and and don't receive, basically have, got no relationship at all to Russia.
Well,
I'm not sure I believe them, to be quite honest.
No, I don't either. They could be a vehicle if once they get their own sanctions lifted from them, then they can then be a vehicle for their father to launder money or to make money off illicitly as he is alleged to have done.
And the interesting thing about reading this article is that they actually made claims that they oppose the war in the Ukraine, etc., etc. Then they wanted later to redact such claims.
Yeah, it's I can see their point of view. Now his ex-wife, Mikhail Friedman's ex-wife, she has been exonerated from the sanctions. So I don't know if exonerated, but they were not placed on her, and the court believed that she was independent enough from Mikhail Friedman's sort of dubious business dealings enough that she need not have been sanctioned. So they figure his ex-wife has been could prove that, but the daughters cannot. The Ottawa dismissed the daughters' requests. They launched separately in federal court. Now, Mikhail Friedman was born in Ukraine, but like Konstantin Kissin, who, if you know Trigonometry, that show Trigonometry, he was one of the co-hosts there. Quite a conservative spokesperson he is, and he himself is a Jewish Ukrainian guy, and he grew up speaking Russian. So I imagine that a lot of the Russian Jews that or Ukrainian Jews that were in Ukraine were Russian speakers, because it seems to me that a fair number of them were. But don't forget, though, that Ukrainian oligarchs of Jewish background have kind of found a place to be in Israel. Zelensky had to boot out some of the oligarchs there, find a safe place for them in Israel too. So there's a real mess going on here that is, which makes me kind of unfortunate the way in which this article has been put together, that none of that connection has been brought forward, and I don't know why they did not.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if these daughters would be Jewish, therefore they would be invited to become citizens of Israel.
Well, they live in Israel, so I don't know, but it doesn't. It says they live in Israel, but it doesn't say what their religion is.
Oh, they're Jews. They can't be. They can't be. They can't be. They have to have at least one grandparent that's Jewish in order to go there to become
a father that's Jewish, so he should be Jewish. Yeah.
Yeah. So all what is required is one grandparent. To be Jewish.
All right. So there's an upcoming Orchid show at the Floral Showhouse. And it's going to run till the end of April. And there's 40,000 orchid blooms on show at the Niagara Park's Floral Showhouse.
Yes, this is kind of I put this in there just so there's a kind of a little bit of a good news thing, like when you want to go to the you want an afternoon of just have a pleasant experience, go down to the Niagara Floral Showcase, and that's pretty much very close to being right across the street from the old power station. Very close to that.
Yeah.
You go in there, and I've seen floral shows in there before. In fact, they had that one gigantic flower there, the biggest flower in the world. At one point, it was there. So it's very, very interesting and very calming too. You walk through these wonderful flowers, and they're going to be orchids there, and they're going to be there till April 27th. So I just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, and it's admission to the Floral Showhouse is $8 per adult and $5 per child. All right, and
That's
what I will do is I will put the link into the comments beneath.
My problem will be trying to convince them that I'm a child so I can save $3.
Well, you got my authority.
Yeah. Oh, I have to correct something here. When I keep making this mistake over and over again. The $50 million that was alleged going to Gaza for condoms. I keep making the mistake of saying it was Gaza, Madagascar. It's Gaza, Mozambique.
So
So
even you were wrong. Even you were wrong.
I got the two mixed up in my head for some reason because I thought it was Mozambique, and then I thought, oh no, I better correct it. It must be Madagascar, but I was wrong. So yeah, so it was Mozambique, Gaza, Mozambique, not Gaza, Madagascar.
Yeah. All right. So take a look at the Floral Showhouse. $8 per adult, $5 per child. I'm not sure exactly when it opens, but running until April 27th. March 8th till April 27th. So it's already open. Just get head down there anytime you're free.
Yeah, if you got kids or grandkids or something like that, they'll like that stuff. It's it'll be a pleasant little place to go, and kids always get into nature. Some they'll run around, but they'll also probably like it. So but definitely I've gone through their floral shows before and felt very nice and comfortable afterwards. It just gives you a kind of pleasant feeling.
Yeah. Right. So just let everybody know where you're on Talking Niagara with myself and David, and we're here weekday mornings at 7 a.m. So if you want to watch live, or you can watch the pre-recorded shows anytime later. All right. Okay. So, yeah. And next piece of information. Sad. Canada drops to 18th on the World Happiness Scale.
Yeah, this is one of these sort of, I don't know who determines this, and they have criteria. So the World Happiness Report, why should we even pay attention to it? But they have certain criteria for people determining how happy they are. And of course, the Nordic, the Finno-Scandian countries, Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Denmark, Iceland, are quite often found to be the countries that have the happiest people. And places like Afghanistan are where people are least likely happy. And Canadians have dropped. I think they peaked at about 11 at one time, but now are down to about, what is it, 28th or something?
18th. Yeah.
Yeah. So why should we even pay attention to this? Oh. I don't know. The United States has also dropped. Is the average citizen does not feel a sense of well-being or of a feeling of belonging, a feeling that they can improve their life throughout their lifetime. There's a number of things like that, and some of them don't have a whole lot to do with money. But here are the variations they use. One, having someone to count on. if you feel that you're kind of alone and don't have someone to count on. GDP per capita, of course, that deals with wealth. Healthy life expectancy is another. Freedom to make life choices, the idea that you can freely make life choices without kind of restrictions about whatever that could be, economic restrictions or societal restrictions. Freedom to make life choices. Generosity is are you or others around you fairly generous, or your society, and perceptions of corruption. So we find that that Canada ranked.
Okay, perceptions of corruption I can understand. We probably had too much of that in recent years.
But when your life is going unhappy, you tend to want to blame other people or
Yeah.
find reasons why that isn't happening.
And I think the right words we use there, perceptions, right? Perceptions. It's not about what reality is, it's about how you perceive reality.
That's true. And there's a tendency for people to think of happiness as a personal issue and a person's own responsibility.
Well,
but researchers believe that's not always the case. Like you said,
yeah.
A Canadian research chair in population well-being assistant professor of the Department of Psychology in the University of Toronto. When one person is unhappy, that's an individual issue, basically.
Yeah.
But when a country is unhappy, this is a structural issue, and a structural issue requires structural problem.
And so Israel, by comparison, is 8th on the world list. We're 18th on the world list, but Israel was at one time 4th on the world list and is now 8th on the world list. So it's been dropping. Has been dropping the same way as Canada's been dropping. Canada's 18th on the world list and was one time 13th on the world list, and and US by comparison is 24th and was at one time 15th on the world list.
Well, Israel is a different animal. It is a ethno-religious state. Basically, everybody's Jewish. Everybody has the same religion or variations of the same religion. They have a sort of hegemony, so they would have a lot of things in common. Whereas a place like Canada, we have people from all over the place, and we don't have that same sort of sense of community.
But again, what has happened in Israel? It's been falling since 22.
Well, there's wars and economic strife. They're held up by the generosity of the United States. Basically, they can't put a artillery shell without buying it from the United States, more or less have the United States buy it for them. And for a long time, the United States was also helping them with their economy. They were at one time getting nearly as much aid money as they get for the defenses. They get in times of peace, they get $3 billion just for the defense. But prior to Obama, they were getting also about $3 billion in economic aid, which Obama stopped because he felt that they didn't need it anymore.
Yeah. Okay, another one on here, Costa Rica.
Costa Rica, I've been to Costa Rica last year, and I can tell you, they're a very happy nation. They're poor. They're much poorer than we are, but they have a very nice society. The people are reasonably prosperous, and they just seem to be happier than we are in their life. When I was in Costa Rica, they had I heard people getting together and singing songs. There was a church close by to where I was staying, the second place I was staying, and almost every night I could hear them all collect in there and sing. And it was a small town, so it would have to be just half of the people in the town in there doing that. They they seem to have more of a sense of community than we do here, um, uh, and they make a pretty good dollar on tourism. Now, the things that are dragging them down, of course, is they have as many Nicaraguans as they have Costa Ricans basically in their country doing the
Yeah,
menial tasks.
but actually, they've had the reverse of what Canada and US have had. Since 22, they've had a meteoric rise. So in 2022, Costa Rica was 23rd on the list. Then Costa Rica was 12th on the list last year, and now they're 6th on the list.
Well, I think part of it too is the status of Costa Rica. Costa Rica's status has come up, and
Yeah,
I think they're fully aware of that in Costa Rica too. Their status has rose because they are a functioning democracy in a sea of 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 problematic governments in Central America. So, in amid this sea of sort of dubious governments, they are a stable democracy,
yeah.
and so their status on the world has
Okay.
changed, and
But
they've
also,
been able to take advantage of that.
but also, Mexico has actually had a meteoric rise in the last 2 years. They're 12th on the list, I think. Here, no, where was it? Mexico, 10th on the list, whereas they were a year ago. They were about 20th.
Well, what's holding back places like Costa Rica and Mexico is because they're transit points for drugs,
Yeah,
and
probably.
that's a problem, and also transit points for the huge sort of migrations that are going around the world. Where, and of course, one of the biggest ones is the pipeline of refugees trying to get into the United States. So what happens in Mexico, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Chile, whatever, is those that can't make it through to the United States will then start to filter through and take places in these other Central American, South American countries, which somehow destabilizes slightly their societies there as well.
Yep.
So there are issues, but yeah, Costa Rica, yeah, definitely, it's it's a happy
Well,
place.
yeah, I'm saying Mexico and Costa Rica are on the happiness scale of going upward, right? So it's a good thing. Like UK is going downward.
You couldn't starve in Costa Rica if you tried. Basically, you could move to a place where you can just stick a stick something in the ground and it'll grow. They have vast areas that are unfortunately are almost desert like because they have problems with famine and rainfall and stuff like that. But they have other places that are very rich and
Yeah,
capable of growing just about anything. So I think the average person probably has very little chance of will always be able to find substance, food type things, and the prosperity too. They're getting better and better roads. They I saw motorcycle clubs there where there's clubs where they just use the little scooters and things, but there are clubs that drive around in on Harleys, but they're not like bike gangs. They just are a club that gets together and likes to drive
yeah,
Harleys around.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, there you go. So that's your world happiness stuff.
But
Yeah.
I really don't know how accurate it is overall. But we seem to be
Yeah,
taking attention to it.
it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting thing. What was that country, Bhutan, that has measures itself on the world gross domestic happiness scale?
That's right. As the sort of king or whatever of Bhutan, when the story is when his ministers came to him and they started talking about gross domestic product, the story is, well, that's all well and good, but what I want to know is my people's gross domestic happiness. How happy are my people? And sadly, they reported back that people are not very happy. They're not very well educated. They don't have really good health care, and most of them are dirt poor. So he's saying, how can we change this? And a Canadian guy was there. A Canadian guy helped with that, and I think he was the one that helped them with their burgeoning tourists, um, the burgeoning tourist industry. This is a very small country that is preserved in time, so which makes it very, very attractive to tourists. So they went high-end tourist. So you can become a tourist in Bhutan, but you got to have some loot. So that brought a lot of loot into Bhutan right away. And of course, that began to be distributed in healthcare and education for the average person. So that is a good thing to do. Even Harper, even Prime Minister Harper mentioned that himself at one time. He says we like to have a little bit of gross domestic happiness here.
Yeah, yeah. And maybe Canada's misfortunes are because the recent leadership has not been focused on gross domestic happiness.
Yeah, and that's because they've lost sight of the fundamentals. The fundamentals are: do you have a job, right?
Yeah.
Are you working, right? So economic security.
Do you have a house?
Your health care taken care of? Are your children being educated and educated well? So these are the primary things that the average person really thinks about. Do I have a job? Do I have economic security? Is my health care being taken care of? What about the education of our society, especially our children?
You missed one, Dave. To have a home.
They have a home. Yeah, well, economic security kind of implies that you would have a home, but those are the things. Those are the things that politicians have lost sight of.
Yeah, and sadly, and I think it's unfortunate. It's the greening up of our economy that Trudeau has been focused on. Let's call it overgreened it, right? I'm not objecting to the greening up of the economy, but it has to be done at the right pace.
Well, that meant that they lost economic opportunities. We could have had that LNG. We could have a liquefied natural gas that we could have been sending to Germany right now when they're or Europe. If we had developed it, which we should have been doing during Trudeau's years, but they put resistance to it, and all the different mines and things that were resisted as well because of environmental restrictions or potential environment. And now you have the Liberals talking about having a pipeline from the west to the east. You would never have heard that under Trudeau's administration, which makes me wonder. Okay, Carney's okay with it, but what about the people underneath him? That's what I mean about putting a brand new engine into a rust bucket.
Yep, I know you are. I know exactly. Okay, so moving on. Significant drop in cross-border traffic is what Niagara is seeing right now. There's no doubt that Canadians are upset about the rhetoric coming from the White House, but at the moment, insults against Canada appear to be having an impact on cross-border traffic at Niagara's international bridges.
Well, I'm going to help adjust that tonight. I'm going over to watch a lacrosse game in Buffalo. I have no shame at all in doing that because, well, for one thing, most of the lacrosse players are Canadian, whether they play for the Bandits or I think we're going to see them play Calgary tonight. So the Buffalo Bandits have got a great lacrosse team, and they've got a great fan base, at least half of which is Canadian. Just like when I went to the Sabres game a little while ago, the place is like, at least half Canadian. So we have Canadian players, a Canadian team coming in to visit. And so I'm going to go over there and watch Canadian great lacrosse game. And I have no particular reservation about that at all. Now, if I would spend money on an extended vacation down there, yeah, that would bother me. I might not do that. I don't think I wouldn't do that. But if I was to go down there to visit a friend, I will do that.
Yeah.
So there's yeah.
But yeah, what you're basically saying is you'd go to visit a friend, but you wouldn't go let's say, to California and stay in a resort in California
No, I wouldn't do that.
yeah.
I would probably never do that anyway because I don't have the kind of
Yeah, and that's probably true. That's probably true. It's not the style of what you do when you go on vacation.
no, like I would go to for one thing, I would probably go to Costa Rica before I go to California because cheaper.
Well,
Southeast Asia is very inexpensive. I'd go back there any day.
I was going to say there's probably 150 different countries you would pick to go to before you went to somewhere like California for a week.
Yeah. What I do plan to do is drive around the United States and Canada, take maybe like 6 months and just go from place to place, start in the southern United States and move up into Canada as the weather improves, kind of start in the southern United States around the beginning of March. And as the weather improves, kind of move up and the United States and into Canada.
So what would you do? What would you do on that trip? You'd be going to see the largest ball of elastic bands in the world, would you? Or the
well, that's top of my list, of course. Who wouldn't?
Or the longest string in the world.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are all top of the list. Of course, the Tea Towel Museum in Bumfuck, Oklahoma, is be the oh shoot, I should have said that.
would be about number 15 on the list. Yes.
Yeah. Well, sorry about that.
Well, hey, I went to one of these things. I went to Jackson, Michigan, the birthplace of the Republican Party. There you go.
Well, you can go to maybe I'll go to Mar-a-Lago, the birthplace of the Trump party.
Well, I ate at the place where it was supposedly where it was born, right? Ate at the hotel where it was born.
Well, so basically I'm kind of upset about how some of the reactions people are having of like burning Teslas and things like that. I like to remind
I think that's disgusting.
I like to remind everybody that there's ordinary people putting those Teslas together and selling them, and what you're doing is you're hurting them because they'll have to be laid off. Do you think Elon's going to lose a whole lot of money? He'll just lay off any employee he doesn't need. So
and
be careful when demonstrate.
Aside from anything else, the chances are that burning a Tesla showroom is probably more than likely burnt a couple of people's cars that were in there for service.
Yeah, so this extremism I don't like. Like, you can diss Elon all you want, but try to remember that ordinary men and women are in that factory putting that together and have a job because of it. And like I said before, remember Henry Ford was a fantastic industrial similar to Elon Musk, but he was a raving anti-Semite. So would you want to, but on the other hand, he employed tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So do you want to exclude, back in those days, do you want to exclude a Ford because the leader of the corporation was an anti-Semite? Or do your neighbor who works there goes to the local Baptist church? Do you want to conflate what he does with what the leader of the company does? So
all right. Okay, Lococo, Laurie Lococo has reiterated concerns about the stresses that students will cause coming into the new university, and the CAO she's expressed concerns to the CAO that the university could strain the city's housing and healthcare resources, particularly as they plan to accommodate larger numbers of students. And
When I
this,
when I first posted it, when I first posted this article, I thought it was a little bit more recent. This is something that started back in August 2024 and was updated January 15th, but I hadn't seen it prior to this. We have discussed it though.
We have discussed the issue. Yeah, we discussed the issue. Okay, so it's a January related issue. I didn't spot that either.
Well, actually, it dates back to August, and then it's been updated in January 15th.
Well, actually, it's been Global University Systems, the operator, projected in August of 23 that UNF would have 8 to 10,000 students within 5 to 7 years.
Well, the biggest, like Lori's brought this up, and she's been, she looks as if she's been inundated with calls about people concerned about this. And we do have a housing crisis. And even though there's supposed to be a dormitory, 125 units for the students, we find that whole families are coming and they're more likely taking up renting or buying homes. And this is causing more stress on the community's ability to house our people, basically.
Wouldn't this have changed because of the situation upon now we're no longer letting as many foreign students in?
Well, I met one of those guys. He was a wealthy man from Bangladesh. I met him once at a Toastmaster meeting. He was a wealthy businessman from Bangladesh who decided whose wife wanted to go to university, and so they decided to come to Niagara Falls to go to that university. I thought, a man of that wealth, how is it that he comes to a little university like Niagara University, private university, but he's moved here, and I couldn't help but think, is he moving here just to sort of get out of Bangladesh? If he's got a lot of wherewithal, and he's got a lot of money. So there was a guy that would come in and he wouldn't sit in any dormitory at all. He'd bring him and his family, and he'd buy a house probably because I was to believe him, he's a wealthy man.
Yeah, exactly. So he'd more likely buy a house, or if he could rent an expensive house if he wasn't buying.
So there would be Lori's argument that people coming in and using up available rental or home space that then causes strain on the prices. But that's the guy that will not be going to the food kitchen or the soup kitchen, which Lori and many others have felt that has happened already with students coming in from Fort Niagara College and Brock University, and also going to places like the Salvation Army and Project Share.
I know that particular individual is probably a lot different than the typical person that comes from Bangladesh. He may well be able to afford to live his life here for the next 4 years. But the typical Bangladeshi, even one from a relatively affluent family in Bangladesh, might well be living in poverty here in Niagara Falls.
Yes. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe he has business concerns he's wanted to establish, and maybe he's just saying what it is, that his wife wanted to go to university, so they thought they'd pack their bags and come here and check the place out and have her go to university.
Yeah.
Although somebody with that kind of money, you would think there would be other universities that would be more available to her with that kind of wealth, but we don't know.
Well, you don't know. You don't know their personal situation.
Yeah. But in any case, Lori's also talked about the impact on housing, food security, and healthcare. Yeah. And although she's saying, yeah, well, we have, even if all these students come in and they're prepared financially to come in to stay in Canada, they have to have a threshold of a little over $20,000 that they can prove that they can go through a school term. There are, of course, a lot of them choose not to stay in the dormitories, which puts pressure on the housing. rental markets, and also they are putting stresses and strains on the healthcare system. We're in a town where we have finding very difficult to get doctors. We find our hospital systems are strained, and schools. Uh,
Yeah.
when you bring in more kids for schools, no matter the fact that they are paying for the schooling of their children, this is still putting a strain on our system, our our school systems, where we don't have enough room for the kids already that have come in. The refugee kids from Roxham Road, basically, is we're still trying to accommodate them, which we should do, which we have to do, but do we want more of that strain on our
Yeah.
society?
Yeah.
Now, Burgess has C.A. Burgess has sort of cautioned pointing out Niagara Falls, University of Niagara Falls, because there are other, like there's Brock University and Niagara College that also bring in a lot of foreign students,
That's true.
but which strains the which presumably strains the local resources. But Laurie then comes back with, well, this is a private university, so there's differences in this one, and but there is that ongoing problem. Now, of course, we do have to caution because you don't want to start being called a racist or things like that. So make this make this very clear that Laurie is making, or others like Laurie are these making these inquiries because of the strains it will put on the
Yeah.
city of Niagara Falls, not from where they come from or anything like that. It's, can we accommodate that many new students residentially,
Yeah.
healthcare wise, and school
And
wise?
And that's exactly it. She's been asserting that the issue is here is the influx of students has put a strain on housing, healthcare, and the infrastructure.
Yeah, and of course, everybody thinks, is this a means by a backdoor way into Canada? That's also another thing that I'll put out there, but she didn't do that. But I'll put that out there too. Um, is it?
I actually don't even know whether they built the student housing as yet.
Well, they claim to have 125 thing dormitory or whatever on Lundy's Lane, but what happens is that so many of these students choose not to go there, and they bring 4 or 5 uh, different people with them, family members, which would make a dormitory not a really good place for them to go. So they,
But is a dormitory is what you're talking about? A dormitory being essentially an old motel that they bought up.
yeah, yeah, I think that's it. I have to search it, but anyway, I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I saw that article. I didn't realize it had gone back to January 15th because we had. Yeah, it says here. She said, while the university has arranged for housing, including in its 125 bed dormitory on Lundy's Lane, and working with third party organizations to provide further accommodations, staff report noted many post secondary students, particularly master level students, which make up a large majority of University of Niagara Falls students, opt often for independent living solutions. That falls in line with my research. That's Laurie's research. That many of the student families are coming with 3, 4, 5 people searching for housing every single day. So that there are a lot of people coming in, and that's their biggest point, is they're taking up residential space in a market where costs of going up, and this will put more strain on cost because that would reduce the
Yeah, some of
availability.
those people are like your Toastmaster friend, wealthy and able to afford to further push the rental market upwards.
Yeah, and the people I've talked to that gone to University of Niagara Falls, so when I've talked to the odd one here and there, it seems they're all going in for marketing,
Yeah,
like marketing, and maybe that's a speciality of the University of Niagara Falls.
don't know. Yep. Okay. All right. I think we've kind of come to the end of the week there, haven't we?
Yeah, I would just like to doff my cap to the Canadian government on this one. Canadian government's going to put up $100 million to help the people in Gaza. Finally, I hear something I like to hear from the Canadian government about Gaza and the outrages that are happening there. We find that all kinds of people are being killed again by
I'm
bombing.
concerned. I'm concerned that bombing is back up again.
It is, and of course, the innocents are getting the brunt of it.
Yeah.
And after a year of war, or however long it was, they didn't dislodge Hamas very much at all. But what they did was killed a whole lot of people, though, including UN people, journalists, and other NGO operatives that were innocent. So the obligation that Canada feels, and I'm glad they do feel, that they have to at least put up some kind of money to help the war-torn, ravaged Gaza Strip.
Yeah,
I'm glad about that, and it will be filtered through the United Nations, the Red Cross, and other agencies that are trusted. So that's a good thing as well.
Okay. So we're going to. I think we're going to end it at that point.
Here's a little story that I got. You know, for 12 years, I've been going to this guy, and 12 years I've been going to this guy, and oh no, how's that story go? Never mind. I'll say it next week. It's just kind of a little humorous anecdote, so I'll.
It came to you, and then it came to your mind, and then disappeared from the mind almost as instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, all right. So thank you everybody for being here, and Dave.
Without further ado, I bid you adieu.
Have a great weekend.